Halftime show. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We're going to cook this sucker till 3 o'clock here on the game. Whether you're hanging out with us in Columbia, Florence, Myrtle Beach, on the app, on the game TV, wherever, thanks for spending some time with us.
Is this your idea of an April Fool's joke to actually show up on time for the show?
Yeah, because I'm leaving in 5 minutes.
Oh, I see.
There you go. April Fool, have fun. Yeah, those. It's funny because now the world we live in, you can't do April Fool's jokes anymore.
I wouldn't recommend it in an
Radio-wise.
office. I wouldn't recommend it in a lot of places. You get that nice little email from HR like, "Hey, come see us tomorrow
Oh,
morning."
absolutely.
Like, well, they must have really loved my joke.
That was funny. Maybe they'll give me a promotion. They're going to promote you right out the door.
I say promote you to a permanent vacation.
Oh yeah, it's like we start getting emails, a few days before April 1, reminding everyone that there will not be any April Fool's jokes.
There won't be no shenanigans.
No, and I mean back in the day it was fun. We had tons of goofy April Fool's jokes back in the day in radio.
Let me ask you this: how many April Fool's jokes over the years would have gotten you fired in today's world?
All of them.
All of them.
There's not one that wouldn't. I mean, the last one, I think I told it on the air here. The last one I did, 2002, 2003, we went on the air. We're doing mornings and sports talk in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just sitting there, co-host, myself, producer, and it's probably, I don't know, it's between 6 and 6:30. We did 6 to 10. And co-host looks over and goes, "By the way," I'm like, "What?" "It's April 1st. "Oh, it's April Fool's Day." They were like, "Should we do something goofy?" "Sure. What should we do?" Because the Ravens back then had a quarterback named Kyle Bowler who was god-awful.
Yep.
And the Ravens were really good defensively and just were a disaster on offense and really needed a quarterback. So we're like, how about the Ravens trade for a quarterback? Okay.
And this is before you could confirm that in 2 seconds on your phone.
Yeah, we weren't that advanced yet.
Right,
We had internet, we had cable, we had that.
Like,
We just didn't
you
have.
had to get on your dial-up computer and be like, "Oh, is that true?"
Exactly. So we're like, okay, who? So we're going through all these quarterbacks, and we settle on this because we knew this would drive people crazy. The Ravens trade 2 first-round picks for Tim Couch from the Cleveland Browns.
Wow.
So we do it, and we're gonna go with it for.
And that's when that was the last year the Browns made the playoffs, or prior to a couple seasons ago.
This is like the Browns trying to reestablish themselves and all that mess after everything that happened. And Couch, of course, was number 1 pick, I believe, 99.
Right.
And so this is like 3 years later, when the Ravens give up multiple first-round picks for Tim Couch.
Yep.
So we go with it. We're talking about breaking it down. What's this mean? What's that mean? This or that or this. And we're going to goof around with it. And then at the end of the show, say April Fools and move on.
Sure.
And we're sitting there. And we have ESPN on the TV. TV's in the studio. We got ESPN scrolling. Then we look up and sources say Cleveland Brown quarterback Tim Couch traded to the Baltimore Ravens for multiple first-round picks.
Are you serious? How long did it take for that to get up there?
About an hour. But then here's the other part. It gets better. There's a gigantic, legendary news talk station out of Cleveland, 3WE.
Okay.
They're reporting it. In Baltimore, WBAL is a huge news talk station. It's 50,000 watt clear channel. We used to joke that Fidel Castro could hear it in Cuba.
Yeah.
Rumor was, now I can't confirm it, the news director walked into the sports anchor, the morning sports anchor, started screaming, "Those bleeping sports talk goofs across the street scooped us on this. You got to go on the air now." And of course he goes, but sources, screw your sources. We're getting beat by those goofs. You got to run with it. So this poor guy's got to go on the air and talk about it. It gets even better, and I'll leave you with this one.
All right.
PR guy for the Ravens. Guy's been there when they were in Cleveland.
And you're the flagship, correct?
No, we weren't at the time.
You weren't the flagship? Okay.
We weren't the flagship, but we had a good relationship with those guys.
Okay.
For the most part. And so he goes into the GM, Ozzie Newsome, and looks at Ozzie and says, "Ozzie, what the bleep?" Ozzie's like, "What?" He goes, we can't make, you got to let me know when we make trades so I can handle it through the media. What are you doing? Ozzie looked up and said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, the Tim Couch trade. What are we doing? You got to let me know. And of course, the PR guy's telling this on the air to us after everything's done the next day.
Right.
And Ozzy looks up and goes, we didn't trade for Tim Couch. He goes, it's all over it. It's on ESPN. It's in Cleveland. It's here. And he looks at Ozzy, he goes, we're trading for Tim Couch. And Ozzy starts laughing and goes, well, I'm the GM. I would know if we're trading for Tim Couch. And the guy keeps going, the media relations guy.
Yeah.
And Ozzy goes, by the way, you know what date is? What does that have to do with anything? I want to get back to this Tim Couch. Look at the calendar real quick. It's April 1st. Oh.
Man.
So once we come out that it's a joke, half the people laughed and half the people wanted to kill us.
Oh, I'm sure. That to get it to that level where it's being reported nationally, that's impressive, actually.
And to be honest, here was the plan. Hey, what? It's April 1st. Oh, want to do something? Sure.
You just came up with that in 2 seconds.
We just sat there and went, what the heck? Because none of us realized it was April 1st until all of a sudden, hey,
totally.
Let's do something.
Well, I can only imagine what would happen if you actually put thought into it.
After that, though, we said we can't do another one.
Oh, no. For one, you can't top that.
No, you just couldn't.
That is like A tier.
Yeah, we were like, we have to retire the April Fool's jokes. We can't do it. Because we will never, because we'll sit, because you know what you do.
Sure.
Now you're going to plan one, right?
We're going to try and get this even bigger and better, and then nobody's going to care.
And nobody, right. It's just, no, because we just said, no, we can't do it.
You should be proud of that.
Matter of fact, my co-host sent me a text, my old co-host sent me a text today. Because it's always our April 1st is our thing.
Okay.
We laugh. He sends me this text this morning. Hey, Ravens traded Lamar Jackson to Tampa Bay.
That's good.
Oh man! So anyway, it's that's our April Fool's moment right there. All right, we are hanging out. Obviously, a huge day yesterday. Fourth straight year, South Carolina women heading off to the Final Four, beating Oregon State, and again a workmanlike, gritty, grindy type of basketball game. It wasn't flashy. South Carolina didn't shoot 60% from the floor, 45% from three, and just carved up the Beavers. It didn't happen. South Carolina shot 33% from the floor, made 4 of 20 from three. Just a bad day offensively all the way around. But still found a way to win. And it got cut to a single possession game in the second half on multiple occasions. But South Carolina always, when they had to make a play, made a play, either end of the court. Offensively, defensively, when they had to step up and they had to make a play, they'd make a play. And when you shoot 33% from the floor and 20% from three in the Elite Eight, you got a really good chance to go home. But to their credit, what was it, 24 offensive rebounds, Tyler? Or 24 offensive rebounds?
Watkins grabbed 14 of them herself.
I mean, they crushed Oregon State on the glass, especially offensive rebounds. And that helped. They got to the line, made their free throws, didn't turn the ball over but 6 times, I believe, in the game.
Right.
And defensively, they really, when it was time, let me tell you, the message at halftime, okay, now, let's not get back into this not guarding the three-point line, because Oregon State really kind of stayed in the game in the first half by making some crucial threes, right, near the end of the second quarter.
Right.
So South Carolina ratcheted up the defense, made some plays on the defensive end, rebounded like maniacs, made their free throws, and hit the big shots they needed to hit when they had to make shots.
Yeah, very effective there in that second half. Oregon State was 2 of 11 from beyond the arc in the second half and did make 2 critical ones to help narrow that gap there towards the end of the fourth quarter. But once they got that gap to 4, that's when Tessa Johnson checked in. She scored 7 of South Carolina's final 8 points, and the defense locked them down for those final 3.5 minutes and ended up with that 12-point victory. So, not the best performance from a statistical standpoint as far as numbers from the floor, but that's what great teams do, is still find a way to win despite that.
You have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, because everybody's really good on their plan A, right?
Sure.
Plan A, everything's wonderful. What happens when the best three-point shooting team in America can't make a three? What happens, or the third best three-point shooting team, I think, is depending on the stats or metrics, but they're
up there.
The best three-point shooting team in America in some metrics.
Right. When
they're not making threes. When Tahina Pau, you've depended on to make shots, can't make a shot. She made 2 shots the whole game. What do? I mean, Cardozo was 6 of 13. No one was making more than half their shots
Right.
on this team. What do? You do everything else. And eventually you hope the ball starts going to the basket. And then when Johnson makes a corner three and the other Johnson makes a corner three, now you're going, right? Raven made that corner three to take the lid off the basket, and then Tessa hit another corner three, and that gave South Carolina breathing room. And then, they made enough plays on offense. They got to the line, made their free throws, and defensively turned it up. And Watkins was phenomenal on the floor. Block shots, rebounds, offensive rebounds. She's running all over the place on switches, guarding multiple people. Ashlyn Watkins tore it up on the defensive end of the court.
She was out there trying to prove a point. She didn't have her best game against Indiana on Friday. And this is actually kind of similar to the SEC tournament, where she didn't play her best against Tennessee in that game that they nearly lost, and went out there and played a really good game against LSU, following it up in the championship. So, she rarely has two bad games in a row, and that was another example of it this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's the mark of what you do when you're a championship caliber squad. You can't make a shot. It happens in basketball. Even the best shooters don't have good days. Even the best shooting teams have off nights. Sure. What do you do when you're not making the buckets you typically make?
Right.
And South Carolina showed you the other ways that they can win games like this. And by the way, this was an Elite Eight game.
Yeah. Again. And by the way, credit to Oregon State. They got past a very good Notre Dame team to get to the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
And again, they're a team that was very effective from shooting the outside three, as we kind of talked about going into it. And again, South Carolina was able to take that away from them, save for 2 shots in the second half, and that ended up being the difference.
Yeah, it was one. Well, you're watching, you're going, yeah, this is an epic struggle to make baskets today. It happens. But then they found the other ways to win and advance to the Final Four. Not a lot of teams are going to shoot 33% from the floor, 20% from three, and find a way to win a basketball game and go to the Final Four.
I'll say I wouldn't recommend doing that this weekend.
No, I would not either. And it's funny because, I'm seeing some of these articles. Ooh, has the Gamecocks shown weakness? Oh, they've blown a big lead against Indiana. Oh, they let Oregon State hang around. Oh, are they not as invincible? My whole thought was this. Yeah, they might not have been perfect, or they might have not have been the machine that they've been, but guess what?
Still won.
They found a way to win.
They're still, last I checked, undefeated.
And that makes them even more dangerous because they are finding ways to win games when the things that typically work for them aren't working.
And I feel like with so much attention being paid to the Mulkeys and the Caitlin Clarks and the all that kind of stuff, it's really not putting a lot of eyes on South Carolina, where I feel like a lot of people are viewing them a little bit more casually this year. Like, oh, wow, they only won by, 4 points against Indiana. What's wrong with South Carolina? When, again, if you're watching the game, intimately and actually paying attention to all the details of it, it's not as big of a story. But, again, I think that's a lot of more casual viewers to the people that are kind of locked in on what's happening with the bigger names and the bigger personalities in this tournament.
Isn't it funny? You're undefeated. You're the number 1 ranked team in the country. You were undefeated last year till you lost in the Final Four. You're now going to your 4th straight Final Four.
Yep.
You would have probably won the whole thing in the COVID year.
Yep.
And you're flying under the radar.
Well, hey, Don Staley said it yesterday. I love it.
Yeah.
Please.
Absolutely.
Count us out. Overlook us.
Yes, because you know what? That just makes her go, oh, baby.
There's that
baby.
chip on the shoulder.
I found the chip. All right, halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler. We'll hear from Dawn Staley coming up in the next segment. Play some sound from Dawn post-game after the victory over Oregon State, which for the 4th straight year puts the Gamecocks into the Final Four. We'll get into that. And Dawn has some interesting things to say. The one thing she said about this team and how she's had to handle it and deal with it and their personality. We'll get to that next. It's very interesting. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. It's a halftime show. We're rolling up until 3 here on the game. Terry for Tyler Head, glad you'll be hanging as we go till 3 here on the halftime show on the game. All right, again, we're kind of looking back at the 70-58 win that South Carolina had over Oregon yesterday, which pops the Gamecocks back into the Final Four for the 4th straight year. We'll get to that in a minute. But yes, this Friday, Tyler Head, our spring golf tournament at Charwood, April 5th. Still a few spots left, $400 a foursome, $200 a pair, 10 o'clock shotgun start. We've got South Carolina baseball tickets, Carowinds tickets, concert tickets, craft beer passports. I believe we're also going to give away season tickets for the rest of the year for Carolina baseball.
That is correct. Also, according to Bill Gunter, us, the celebrities of 107.5 The Game, will be out there.
We are?
As far
celebrities,
as,
I mean, really?
I was not aware that we were, but yes, according to Bill Gunter, we are the celebrities of 107.5 The Game.
Celebrities, okay.
How good's your autograph?
You know, it's so weird when someone asks for one. I mean, I appreciate it. I sign them, stuff like that. But it's so weird. I've been in this business my whole life. I've never gotten used to it.
I've never been asked for one, so.
Oh, you will at some point. The first time it happens, it'll happen to you. It'll kind of catch you for a minute. You're like, oh, you really want mine?
You can forge my signature and steal my identity or something?
Because, you appreciate it. But for us, I just never look at us that way,
sure,
right?
Sure.
I look at us a bunch of goofs who sit and talk sports.
Pretty much.
And so when someone asks for that, I go personally, I'm like, okay, sure, yeah. Right.
Why?
Here, I won't lie to you. When it first happened, I was in music radio. I was like early 20s. I went, why? Why do you want that? And then, okay. All right.
Sure. All right.
Okay, I'll do it. No big deal. But it is weird. But because I never looked at us ever as like celebrities at all.
According to Bill, we are. So.
Well, Bill's a celebrity according to Bill.
That's true. Lexington High School basketball legend, I think, almost set the free throw record, I believe, if I understood him correctly. So, yeah, a lot of local pull.
Now, who told you Bill was a legend at Lexington High School?
Bill.
Okay, just checking.
Sounds about right.
He is the greatest player at Lexington High School with the name Bill under 5 feet tall.
Bill Gunter under 5 feet tall, because there could have been another Bill before him.
Under 5 feet. How about the last name Gunter?
Yeah,
under 5 feet tall.
Well, that might be a little bit too ambiguous too. Can't be too sure.
All right, so we'll be out. Hey, hang out with us. We'll be there all day. Again, a lot of cool stuff to win. 803-755-2000. Call Charwood to register. There's a few spots left. Because typically this thing sells itself out in the final week. After everybody looks at the weather and says, okay, cool, we're in.
It's going to be nice.
It's going to be nice. So, again, 803-755-2000, our spring golf tournament at Charwood. Hang out with our buddies Rock and all the crew over at Charwood. All right, so Dawn Staley, after the win, post-game, discussed this group, which after the last group that just went through and the veterans and, all the players that were part of so much winning had graduated and moved on, Dawn had either a new crew or a crew of players who are stepping into roles they've never had to step into before. So here's Dawn Staley talking about getting this group to the Final Four, and what did she learn from last year?
Just proud because we beat the odds. I mean, the odds said that we weren't, we shouldn't make it back to the Final Four. Just proud of our team and for them believing in themselves. They created a certain level of chemistry and culture, and they stuck with it. And then they allowed us to coach them, and they trusted us to coach them, even when it didn't feel good to them personally at different times of the season. And then overall, I just think that Guy has a funny way of dealing with people, and I'm one of his. And for us to lose the way we lost last year, and for him to bring us to this point today, makes me believe a little bit deeper, and it strengthens my faith in who he is. Because I mean, I don't know what the Bible verse is, but I know that when you're at your worst and your weakest moments, he's at his best. And he started working on that the day that buzzer sound last year during this time. So I am proud of our team, and I don't want to ever not give God the glory for given us uncommon favor.
You know, as much as like fans, that stung last year. That was out of nowhere. No one thought South Carolina was going to lose last year. No one.
I've said this plenty of times. I didn't legitimately believe it was going to happen until the clock hit zero. And South Carolina had faced some adversity in that season at times before, but they always found a way. I always seen them do plenty of times this season. They always found a way to win the game, even when it looked bleak. Cardoso nailing that 3 against Tennessee a couple weeks ago. They found a way to make it happen. So until, again, there's no more time left on the clock, you're not going to believe they're going to lose any game ever. And, you know, it is funny to think about a team that was undefeated through 99% of the season last year, coming in, you know, not being expected to do that again, or not being expected to be in that same position, but with so much turnover, with that great freshie class gone off to the WNBA, and sure, plenty of pieces that were coming off the bench a season ago and playing their roles. We didn't know how they were going to function as a new starting unit, and they've been just as good, if not better.
Well, they're so much. They're more versatile.
Yeah.
Like last year's team had that issue with consistent perimeter shooting and 3-point shooting, and this team, I mean, yesterday was their worst 3-point shooting day of the year, 4-20 from 3. But they can make shots. They make threes. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. They got perimeter players who can beat you. They've got bigs who can beat you. They beat you on defense. You can play fast with them, play slow with them, whatever. They're just more versatile. Last year's team had that thing that finally bit them, right? Mm-hmm. Even though no one thought they were going to lose.
No,
I mean, no one thought that team last year was going to lose. And, you know, there's the notion that if Iowa doesn't get away with playing that defense they played, and you beat Iowa, you already taken out LSU.
Sure.
You whooped them at CLA. So the thought, again, you could never back it up because it didn't happen, but your thought is if you don't have that bad day against Iowa, you're going to beat LSU. That's the thought here of Gamecock fans, because I get it. So you just figure you were one bad game away from most likely hanging another banner. And especially with these players who were here for so long, Tyler, and meant so much to the program, and then all of a sudden, in one, boom, it's over.
Yeah.
So think about how fans feel now going in that locker room. And then Dawn Staley and how much those players met with her. And she even said yesterday, I just didn't think it was fair because how great these kids were and how wonderful they were and how hard they worked. I didn't think it was fair that they lost.
Right.
You know, and so you got to get it all back together, right, and move forward. And the one thing about this year, though, with Dawn, probably more than the players because they're all you know, new or different roles, is she knows you can lose it in a blink of an eye now.
Yep.
I mean, they lost it a couple years ago in the final with that layup, too. Aaliyah Boston missed the layup. Mm-hmm. So Dawn has had 2 bad experiences with losing it painfully.
Yeah.
So she knows, hey, all you youngins here doing the Macarena and jumping around and everything, understand something. Nothing's promised here, right?
Right.
We got to earn this thing. Just because we're better than everybody doesn't mean we're going to win. We were better than everybody last year. So lesson was learned how painful that was last year, and the lesson of a few years before how painful that was in the Final Four, the semifinal game.
Yep.
All right, we'll come back. Want to hear a couple more things from Dawn. One is that this team, the impact this team has had on her, because they're different than what she's been used to lately. We'll get into that next, and also flying under the radar, even though you're undefeated and the top-ranked team in the country. We'll continue our conversation about Dawn and the women as they move off to the Final Four for the 4th year in a row. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, halftime show rolling up until 3 on the game. Hanging out here, halftime show. Terry Ford and Tyler Head on the game. All right, this is happening again. Football season, we had the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest. Pot was $100 a game, remember?
Yes, it started out, or it started at 100,
right,
grew as the
and
season
it kept
went
going
along, and
every game.
It turned into something beyond our wildest imagination.
It made it to $1,000. It became a thing that.
And you missed the best part of it.
I know. I left because I left because it was a blowout. The Vandy game was a blowout. I was leaving the press box and I had to go do some stuff. And I get in the car, and as soon as I turn on my stereo, what do I hear? Special Teams Touchdown, South Carolina. So it became a huge. People in the press box were walking up to you guys about the Special Teams contest.
Yeah, I need to get out to Founders because I really hope I could be there when they finally hit a grand slam to see what the reaction to that would be. Because
we got to $1,000 in the Lawyer Lisa contest. And we were joking before we started our new one for baseball, the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. We were like, what if this would reach the levels of the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest?
What, we're halfway through the season?
$700 right now. Not a Grand Slam yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It was so many bases loaded situations. And each time I'm like, is this it? Mm-hmm. We're finally going to do it? And nope, not yet.
So go to 1075thegame.com and register for the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. It goes up $25 every game. Right now it's at $700. So as soon as if a Gamecock would hit a Grand Slam against Georgia Southern on Wednesday, you'd pocket $700 if your name gets picked. It's very simple, but you got to register to get yourself in there. Again, go to 1075thegame.com. All right, so Dawn Staley also post-game after the 70-58 win yesterday was talking about, this is what's so interesting to me. She talked about the impact this team has had on her. Cut 7, Tyler. We swear it'll start. We promise.
I have to get my mouse to work. Here we go.
I mean, this is probably the first time in my career that a team has more stamina in certain areas, like much more stamina than I could discipline them for. So I've learned to not fight certain battles. Not core value battles, not the core principle of who we are and what I stand for, but just that their identity, they're loose, they play free, and it's allowed them to kind of police themselves and to hold each other accountable, and so in one regard, I relinquish that. In the other regard, they're taking care of it. But it's just different than I'm used to. So I give in to allowing them to be their silly selves. Like, they're really silly. They talk a lot about nothing, but some of that talk is holding each other accountable. They talk to each other like in some of the most unadulterated ways that we got to close the door and just kind of give them their space. But they enjoy each other. That's who they are.
Here.
It's so funny. Preston and Bill and Jen hit it on the nose this morning because I was thinking the same thing. It's like at some point, like if you have, and you don't yet have kids, and when you do, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's when you get to that point as like a parent, you go, you know what, screw it, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's a little battle that's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what she's talking about, not the core principles of the program. Like, there's certain rules like your parents had for you, right, in the house.
Sure.
And there's certain core principles of your family they're not going to change. But there's some things that matter to them at a certain point, but then they go, you know what? Who cares?
If they could detail the way they wanted you to do it, you're not doing it exactly that way, but it's working. Let's not mess with a good thing. It's not that bad. We'll just keep on going.
Yeah, like my kids have all done things differently than I would have done it, but as long as it's going along okay,
yeah,
and you're doing you, okay, that's fine. even though in the beginning you might say, no, you got to do it this way because this is the way it works. Let me tell you, this is the way it works. But then they're doing it different. Your first thing is, what the hell are you doing? This isn't the way to do it. But then you take a step back and go, no, that's the way it works for them.
And I feel like Dawn Staley would have one of the better perspectives of anybody in women's college basketball because she's been at the helm for so long, going back to her time at Temple and all the great teams that she coached there. Obviously, the ones she's had here at South Carolina, student athletes in today's age are much different than the ones 10 to 15 years ago, and the way you go about dealing with them and kind of the way you guide them along is also different as well. So seeing it change virtually year to year has got to be a very unique thing for a coach like that. And yes, what Leah Boston and the likes were doing a season ago in practice and stuff like that is probably much different than this team being led by Camila Cardoso and these other girls. But again, it's working at the end of the day, and you kind of don't want to mess with the good thing.
It's funny because we were joking about it during one of the breaks. Bill and Preston and I were sitting here in the studio, and I was like, because my two youngest, I'm different with than my two oldest.
Yeah.
And my two oldest get mad. They're like, what is this mess? If I would have done that, you know what would have happened to me? I said, yeah. What happened to you, Dad? I got older. Is what happened. I got a little smarter. I thought I was doing the right thing with you guys, but then I learned a better way to do it. That's all. And they're like, well, that sucks because the way you're doing it now, they're getting off easy. And so my two oldest, it drives them crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if like some of the, like Asia Wilson would come back for an example and watch some of this, she'd probably look at Dawn and go, Coach, you're letting that go?
You would
Seriously?
chew me out if I did that in practice.
Right. I'd have been running laps till I puked if I would have said something like that. But you evolve and you just get wiser and you understand there's certain hills aren't worth dying on.
Right.
Now, again, you don't change who you are, your core values, what matters the most, like the foundation of what you are, who you are.
Sure.
But some of the other stuff is like, seriously, who cares?
Yeah.
It's just at the end of the day, it's working. Well, I'm not going to say anything.
I brought this up the other day when we talked to Chris Wellbaum on Friday, I guess it was. He mentioned that, when the team got back to the hotel after practice on Thursday or whenever it was, somebody found a bunch of like party balloons and they were blowing them up and screwing around with those. And again, that sounds like a counterproductive thing for a team that's about to play in the NCAA tournament. But Don's like, they were having fun. Let them have fun, and they still went out there and won the game the next day.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing the Macarena before the start of the second half.
Right.
I think it was Ashlyn Watkins right before the start of the Indiana game was curling one of her teammates because, and they're just different. But as long as it's working, and you let it kind of just process itself.
I think there's this perception that we all have in our minds that when you're talking about the best of the best in whatever sport, it has to be like this military style, like no nonsense, can't put a foot out of line type of deal. And when you look at the Alabamas of the world and stuff like that, it certainly gives off that to some degree, but that's not how everybody does it. And you can be successful while also allowing your players to have fun, also being a little bit loose. And as long as you're still winning at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
All right, real quick, let's move to this other cut, Tyler, I want to get to. It's Dawn talking about flying under the radar despite being undefeated and the number one ranked team in the country.
I don't know, but I like it. I really do. Like, go ahead, take the spotlight, put it somewhere else. Let this team continue to thrive in the space that they're given, and hopefully at the end of the day, next week this time, I'm hoping that we give a lot of people a lot to talk about. But it's like that. I'm looking forward to tomorrow night's game. Now that we've won, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to enjoy it like everybody else. Like probably millions and millions of people are going to tune into that game. I'm going to be one of them. I don't have a Nielsen ratings in my house, but you can count me in to watch the game tomorrow night.
If I'm Dawn, hey, focus on Caitlin Clark. Focus on Angel Reese. Focus on Kim Mulkey's battles with the LA Times, with the Washington Post. Hey, Juju Watkins, unbelievable freshman. Focus on all that, and we'll just stay behind the radar, and we'll just do our thing, and hopefully we're cutting down the nets when it's over with in Cleveland. And I can also use this as motivation with my team.
Yeah, see, they don't care about you. They're not talking about you. They'd rather talk about these other teams. I'd say even like Juju Watkins at Southern Cal playing tonight against UConn. They're getting, more eyes on them and more conversation being about them.
Paige Beckers is still around.
Everybody's
Right.
looking at South Carolina is like, oh yeah, they're still undefeated. Yeah, whatever. But Angel Reese over here, like it is funny how it's being perceived.
Oh, and if you're Dawn Staley, it's playing out perfect for you. You and your undefeated top-ranked team just fly under the radar, and when it's all said and done, you hope that you're having the big parade here in Columbia and you're hanging another banner.
Right.
That's the perfect world for Dawn Staley. All right, Firehouse Sub text of the hour is coming up 803-404-6100. So get that in. Top of the hour, football, and more footballs. We'll focus on spring football and the Gamecocks right here on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game. All right, time for our text of the hour at 803-404-6100. We get there, Tetherhead.
Yeah, so Clemson weighing in reference to yesterday's game between South Carolina and Oregon State says the officiating was horrible both ways, and I would have to agree with that. I don't think it was biased in one way or the other. I just think it was bad all around.
It was bad. I mean, if you typically in the post you can play, or they let you play a little bit,
especially if your arms are up.
I mean, the Oregon State coach was not happy about some of the calls, against his players, and I get it. Both ways, the officiating was not very good.
The one that I think ended up being Reagan Beers' fourth foul, where I think it was Fagan that kind of fell over into her.
Yeah.
And Beers got called for the foul. Like, that's legitimate gripe. I'm like, I can, because they showed her dad up in the stands being mad. I'm like, bro, I get it. Like, that was a bad call.
And Beers' third foul was one of those two where you're like, interesting. Okay.
I think because then a few minutes after that is when they called Cardoso for a foul.
Cardoso just had her arms up.
I
Right?
feel like
Makeup call?
was a makeup call. Because I was
Yep.
like, all right, I feel like they screwed up the first time, so they kind of had to make it up to her a few minutes later.
Because Cardoso never did.
Yeah.
I mean, Beers came into Cardoso's
she didn't
arm.
engage at all.
Yeah, so I thought that was makeup call too. It was not a very well officiated game, and when you got a lot of front court people that are important in scoring the basketball.
Yes.
In a situation like that, sometimes you get these kind of clunky officiated games. Everybody, and we're going to get to this later, everybody whines about Zach Edey at Purdue. But, when you've got a guy 9'7" in the lane getting the basketball constantly, and people who are a foot shorter than him are trying to prevent him from scoring, it sometimes the officiating goes sideways.
Sure.
I mean, you had multiple bigs in this game, getting a lot of touches. Now, in the Indiana game, you had the same thing, but it wasn't as bad. But yesterday, I agree. If you want to talk about officiating, Texter, not going to disagree with you on that one. It was not. That one's not going to go in the video of how to.
No.
That won't be one. So, yep. Thank you for the text, 803-404-6100 on the text line. All right. Also in this basketball game, we talk about Ashlyn Watkins. But before we move on and we get football.
Watkins.
Yeah, what did I even say?
I said Watkins.
Swatkins, yes, absolutely. Yesterday, Dawn said she one of the best shot blockers she's ever had. Watkins is so athletic. It felt like there was three of her on the court on defense.
Yeah.
But I also want to give Raven Johnson the prop she deserves. She got all regional, which she deserves. Because, again, when you look at her stats and her numbers, yesterday she was in foul trouble. Only 1 of 6 from the floor, 1 of 3 from 3, but that 3 was gigantic.
Yeah, stepped up in a big moment.
Gigantic 3. She had 6 assists, 5 rebounds, only 1 turnover, and she runs the show. And why? Here's the stuff to me that's not in a scorebook. There were multiple times in this game that Raven Johnson got the ball and South Carolina was pushing pace, coming down court, looking for something in transition. And it wasn't there. Now, instead of forcing that, where, you might get a hoop, but you also might get an offensive foul or turn over yourself or miss a bunny that would lead to a breakout the other way, whatever.
Yeah.
Raven Johnson looked and said, we really don't have numbers. I'm not going to force it. Let's pull it out and run the offense. That's what a good quarterback does. Now, if she's in transition with the rock and says, I like our number advantage or I like where we're at, let's go.
Sure.
That's the decision point guards make all the time that no one talks about. Talon Cooper did a ton of it this year for the men. When you got the ball and you're the point guard and you're bringing it down in transition, you're looking at the numbers, you look at the way the court is, you're looking at the D, you got peripheral on your players. You got in a split second decide, are we going, are we stopping, and we're going to run the offense. And that's the little things that are gold that don't show up in box scores. So, and plus, she obviously made some huge shots in the Indiana game late. So she's now making big shots late in games despite what her stats are.
Sure.
And she's making smart decisions with the basketball regarding transition and really even in the half court to get this thing set up to make sure you're in the right stuff.
Yeah. And we knew she was capable of being that kind of player when she was playing last year as a true freshman, and we knew she was going to be stepping into a bigger role this year. And again, while the stats themselves may not speak necessarily to how good she is playing. She's stepping up in those key moments, which in a tournament setting like this, that's what you really need.
And plus, remember, last year in the game against Iowa, and they showed the highlight again yesterday, Raven Johnson gets a ball outside the three-point line, and Caitlin Clark almost waves like, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, take the shot, babe.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, you're not going to make it. Go ahead. And now look at her making big threes in big moments. So good for Raven Johnson. All right, our poll question of the day. If South Carolina beats NC State in the Final Four, who would you want to see the Gamecocks play for the championship? LSU, Iowa, UConn, Southern Cal. We'll give you the results coming back before we go to football, and more football right here on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We go till 3 here on the game. And, of course, our football hour sponsored by our friends at Atlantic Windows and Doors. Halftime show with Terry Ford and Tyler Head, hour 2. We do football this hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Before we get to football, our poll question, Twitter, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Our question, if South Carolina gets by NC State in the Final Four and moves on to the championship game, who would you want to see the Gamecocks face the most? Choices were LSU, Iowa, UConn, Southern Cal. So far, we've only had this thing going for an hour. We've got 187 votes already. So who would you choose if you had your choice, Tyler Head?
I would pick Iowa. There's obviously the revenge factor from a season ago. I feel like the way this tournament was set up was for that to be the national championship at the end of the day, where as opposed to last year, you had South Carolina and Iowa on opposite ends of the bracket, or the only way they could meet is in a national championship. I think about this from a ESPN TV side of things. Mm-hmm. There's no bigger game that could be your national championship than that.
Yeah. No, I think if I wanted to pick the game I wanted to see, it would be Iowa, South Carolina.
Yeah, because again, this is a team better built to beat Iowa.
Again, that defense that Iowa played last year would not work this year, in my opinion.
Not at all.
Would not work. Then they would have to come out and guard you man to man. And here's the ironic part of last year's loss. Iowa's does not hang their hat on defense.
No.
They're an offensive-oriented basketball team. So to see them make a defensive adjustment that really helped win them that game is stunning in so many different ways, but that defense doesn't work this year.
And I feel like overall they hang their hat more on Caitlin Clark's success more than anything else, where if she's not having a great game, which to her not having a great game is only scoring like 22 points.
Right.
If she's not scoring at her usual clip, that's how they lose, which going back to when Indiana beat them a couple weeks ago, she scored 24 points in that game, but was like 8 of like 30 from the field.
Well, that's
or
what you
like
want.
That. Yeah, you got to just force her to take a ton of shots.
Right. You want her not to be efficient to get her points.
Right.
You want her taking more shots than points. Like you just hit it. Okay, Caitlin Clark scored 24 points, on 31 shots.
Right.
That's what you want. You want to knock down her efficiency. I would pick Iowa as well. 1, the matchup. 2, the revenge factor from last year and things of that nature. And 3, you're playing against, who a lot of people look at as the best offensive player in women's college basketball and the most recognizable player in college basketball, men, women, whatever.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the LSU thing is obviously intriguing from the familiarity standpoint, and given the fact that last time you saw them, things got very heated, and it's a rivalry that's getting deeper and deeper. I just don't like the idea of playing the same team 3 times in a season. We saw what happened with Tennessee, where it took a miracle shot from Cardoso to beat them the 3rd time that you played them. So I don't know how much more LSU could gain on them in the 3rd game. I wouldn't want to take that chance.
Well, here's what the poll so far is answering. Iowa far and away number 1 at 39%. LSU at only 18%. 3rd, Southern Cal is 2nd at 27%. UConn is last at 16. That's very interesting that so far the voters would rather see Southern Cal. Maybe it's what you said.
Yeah.
Already seen LSU twice, don't need to see it a 3rd time.
Right.
Or maybe they look at it as they have LSU fatigue.
Well,
could be.
And here's the thing. When you look at it from that perspective, okay, we've seen plenty of LSU, not just from South Carolina playing them, but for just your casual viewing experience. All right, we know what LSU is. We see Caitlin Clark and her breaking records night in and night out. That's fine. UConn's always at the forefront and always in the conversation. You see plenty of them. Southern Cal's just the unknown here. And
right.
not necessarily an unknown, but a team that you don't get to see as much, where even if you're a huge women's basketball fan, they were tipping off games at 9, 10 o'clock on the West Coast. You probably didn't see a whole lot of them until they got into the tournament. Juju Watkins emerging as one of the new superstars of women's college basketball. I think there's an intrigue there of like, what would this look like if USC took on USC?
There are people who think Juju Watkins as a freshman could be the best player in women's college basketball over Caitlin Clark right now.
It's hard to argue with.
Donnie hit us on Twitter X, Southern Cal. Ready? I think Juju Watkins is the best player in women's college basketball right now. Just seeing her versus this Gamecocks roster would be entertaining. It could be that simple. Or like you said, the unknown of Southern Cal, or getting to beat the other USC or whatever it is.
Right.
It's funny that they are far and away in 2nd place behind Iowa in our little unscientific poll. So, again, you can go to at 1075 The Game on Twitter X and vote. We've already gotten almost 200 votes in less than an hour. So feel free to jump on that. All right, now flipping over to football here on the game, and sponsored by our buds at Atlantic Windows and Doors. I thought Wes did a really nice job. Wes Mitchell, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour here. Obviously, his main gig is GamecockCentral.com. Watched 3 reps of 11 on 11.
Mm-hmm.
And God love Wes. He must type really fast or scribble really fast or has one of these crazy photographic memories, right?
Or, he could have recorded it. There's also that.
That's what I mean, yeah. Or he did something to make sure he had all 3 reps to where he could tell you who came out on all 3.
He detailed every bit of those 3 reps.
It's really impressive.
Here's the thing. And look, him and Chris have been doing this for a long time. They know they don't get to see a lot at spring practice, so that they squeeze every bit of juice out of what they do get to see.
Oh, no doubt. And I give them a ton of props for this because it's very interesting. So first rep. Now he goes through, he has the starters on every rep, all 3 reps. First rep starter, Lenore Sellers. Running back, Oscar Attaway. Nothing surprised there because there's no Rocket Sanders.
Nope.
Wide receivers, Gage Larvadan.
There you go.
Jared Brown, Mazio Bennett, the freshman wide receiver.
Now we're getting interesting.
Now, again, this is just who's playing reps in spring practice. Let's not get sideways, but just from what Wes saw. The fact that Mazio Bennett did the first rep with
the fact that he's even in consideration for a first-team rep is significant.
Yes. Offensive line left to right, Ja'Kai Moore, Kamar Bell, Rashawn Lee, Trevon Ball, Case and Henry. Not a ton of shock there. I mean, Ja'Kai Moore starting the year as possibly the left tackle going into practices doesn't surprise me at all.
And people have to remember, Kamar Bell, he comes in with a lot of experience.
Yes, and a good amount of success.
Yeah.
Rashawn Lee was the center before he got moved out to right tackle because, man, somebody has to do it, right?
And he can play anywhere on that line.
And Baugh had his good moments and his bad moments like any freshman last year.
Sure.
So we'll see with a year under his belt how things go for Baugh, but so he's in the first rep. And Case and Henry, who they like, he just can't stay on the field.
Right.
Tight end, no one surprised, Josh Simon. There's so many players at defensive line and linebacker. Again, don't make too much of what you hear because you got to get them all in. Defensive line, rep 1 was Elijah Davis, TJ Sanders, Tonka Hemingway. You might go, Davis? Really? So Davis, Sanders, Hemingway. And again, Davis is there for now. Again, we always forget guys can get better. They're allowed to get better.
Sure.
I remember watching the spring game last year, and Davis had some really nice moments in last year's spring game.
Yeah.
He didn't really turn them into eye-popping moments during the season. He did play, but who knows what Davis is right now.
Right.
Linebacker, Bam Martin Scott, Demetrius Knight, Debo Williams, as we're looking at the 3-3-5 alignment here. None of that surprises you. Demetrius Knight, very athletic guy, productive player, coming through the transfer portal, doesn't surprise me. And Bam Martin Scott, once they went 3-3-5, our boy Bam Martin Scott popped, rushing the passer.
Absolutely.
And again, Debo Williams, the minute he walks on the field, there's some kind of on switch.
I'd say he tackles someone as soon as he steps on the field.
Somebody. Could be a water boy, could be cocky, or could be, whoever. The corner, O'Donnell Fortune, also Judge Collier. That doesn't surprise you. Collier out there right now with in the first rep. And then Nick Emenwari, DQ Smith, and Jalen Kilgore wrap up the safety nickel. Second rep, again, nothing surprising. Luke Doty, still getting reps at quarterback. And number 2, Jawarin Howell, doesn't surprise anyone. You knew he was going to get some run. The wide receivers, Elijah Caldwell, DeBron Gatling, and Peyton Mangrum.
Okay.
And a little surprising, a little bit.
I remember Caldwell had a lot of conversation about him going into last season. I think we were a little surprised. Maybe he didn't end up doing something when the season rolled around.
Oh, in spring and summer, he was a talk, man.
The talk of the town.
And now you get another one of the freshmen in Gatling.
Yeah, and there's an opportunity for him to make a big jump in year number 2. So nothing too shocking there.
And then now offensive line, Sidney Fugar, left tackle, Marquis Anderson, left guard, Torricelli Simpkins at center, Blake Franks at right guard, A.J. Parks at right tackle. You're sitting there thinking, okay, well, where's Josiah Thompson? Where you can relax. It's spring. It's just reps. Nobody go crazy. I remember Sidney Fugar came in, another guy. We keep saying, that Baugh, shouldn't have played. Tree shouldn't have played. Fugar shouldn't have played. Remember, he was coming in from a smaller college.
Yep.
Everybody thought he was just going to kind of hang and develop, and this was going to be the year for Fugar to be able to compete. But Fugar had to play last year. And again, like the others, he had his struggles at times.
Yeah, he was kind of seen as a project guy, and I don't think there were any intentions of putting him on the field right away. But when Henry went down 4 snaps into the season, I think that's when they inserted him in the lineup. And I mean, I give him credit. He gave it his best shot, hung around for a while, but as the season wore on, eventually kind of got rotated out of there. But again, another guy that through a year of experience in the SEC, now going through another spring and upcoming summer, he could develop to the point of being one of your guys on the offensive line. Who knows?
And then defensive line-wise, DeAndre Jules, Monkel Goodwine, no surprise there, getting on the field. 2 transfer portal guys. Brian, and then you look at the edge. Now here we go to 4-2-5, the edge. Brian Thomas, JT Gear. Linebacker, Bengali Kamara, Fred Johnson, Emery Floyd, and Vakari Swain at corner. Gerald Kilgore and Keenan Nelson at safety. Kelvin Hunter on the nickel. No David Spaulding in that crew.
Okay.
Or no Kyle Kennard yet either. So, again, you're sitting there, you can't make too much of it because there's a third rep we'll get to in a minute.
Yes.
But you're seeing some of the guys you thought you'd see and some of the guys you're waiting for going, well, hear about all these guys and haven't heard their name yet. But again, you can't make too much of reps in practice in the 5th day of spring.
Especially when you're talking about the defensive front, the guys in the tackle room and the edge room. There's so many bodies there and only 2 to 3 spots you can rotate them through at a time that, it's going to, for one, it's going to take a while to figure out who your main guys on each end of that are going to be. But going through spring practice, it takes a bit to cycle through those guys and give them the reps.
All right, here's rep 3. The quarterback, Davis Bevel.
Okay.
Davis Bevel gets the 3rd rep at quarterback. Came in from Oklahoma in the transfer portal. Oscar Attaway is back for the 3rd rep at running back. Gage Larvadan this time. Amari Huggins Bryce and Tyshawn Russell are with Gage Larvadan. Offensive line again, Ja'Kai Moore, Kamar Bell, Rashawn Lee, Trevon Ball, Kason Henry. That didn't change. Nick Elskinis, always mess up his name, is the tight end. Defensively, TJ Sanders, Tonka Hemingway. Now you get to the edge, Kyle Kennard and Des Yu. Linebackers, Bam Martin Scott's back with Debo Williams, O.D. Fortune, Judge Collier, Amenwari, Smith, Kilgore. So that kind of gives you the idea in rep 3. Okay, there's a couple names missing, and we'll talk about that on the other side, as we don't want to make too much of it, but I know that you want to make too much of it, so we'll make something of it.
We get crumbs during the springtime compared to what an actual practice is, so we're clinging on whatever we can and trying to make the most of it.
And really, it's tough to make anything of it.
Sure.
So let's see what we can make of it coming back. Football, the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We'll get back in here, halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler had more on we want to call it the rep chart. Is that a depth chart?
Sure.
The rep chart?
Sure.
Of South Carolina at spring practice. Next, halftime show right here on The Game. Oh, yeah, the 107.5 The Game app, very simple. You just roll off to your Google Play Store or your iTunes, and you download the 107.5 The Game app, and anywhere you go, you listen to the game. You can listen at work, you can listen if you're out doing yard work, if you're taking a walk, if you're on a treadmill, if you're, trying to like scam away from work, away from your office.
Well, nobody would do that.
Never would anybody do that. Wherever you're at.
Or, if you're waiting outside of HR to have a conversation about your April Fool's Day joke tomorrow.
You can listen to the game.
That's right.
Yes, you can. All right, so again, it's very simple. You just go to iTunes or Google Play, and you just, with your thumb, finger, pinky, whatever you do, your little typing on your phone or your device, 107.5 The Game. Download and listen. All right, so it's football, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors, Tyler. And we went over the first 3 reps that Wes Mitchell got to see during Gamecock spring practice. Now, of course, the first questions are going to be, quarterback, Bevel? Where's Ashford? Where's Robbie Ashford? I don't know. Where's Dylan Stewart on the edge? Somewhere at practice, but obviously didn't take part in the first 3 reps. Josiah Thompson didn't take part in the first 3 reps. Does that mean anything? No. Not in day 5 of spring practice. Not at all. But it is, people will go, wow, wait a minute. Because it looks like that's, that Gage Larvidan's in there in rep 1 and rep 3. We've heard Larvidan's really made plays so far in the spring.
Sure.
At wide receiver. Oscar Attaway, we figured would be the number 2 or the 1B, whatever to Rocket Sanders. So it makes sense. Here he is, right?
Right. Getting
2 of the 3 reps. The offensive line, the first rep offensive line came back for the 3rd rep. So, again, doesn't take CSI to go, is that who they're looking at right now as their ones? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I get the thought process.
Yeah.
Tight end, obviously, it's Josh Simon's gig to lose. We all know that. And if you look at, first of all, up front, we know TJ Sanders and Tonka Hemingway are going to get a ton of run. Elijah Davis been in the program now for another year. Maybe we'll get more, more reps. DeAndre Jules and Monkel Goodwine come in out of the transfer portal. They get in rep 2, makes sense. Brian Thomas, at times, man, he shows you something, and then at times, all of a sudden, you're like, is Brian Thomas here? But Brian Thomas, there is potential there. JT Gear came in last year, coming off a 5-sack season at Syracuse. So you get it. Then you look at the linebackers in rep 2, Bengali Kamara, coming in from the transfer portal. Then the interesting one is Fred Johnson in rep 2.
Mm-hmm.
You're going, well, no, Wendell Gregory, Fred Johnson. Interesting. But a lot of people like Fred.
They do. I think we call him J.R. Johnson.
I'm calling him Fred because it's right here in Gamecock Central calls him Fred.
Okay, well.
I'd rather be called, I wouldn't want to be called Fred. If I got the 2 choices, I'd go with RJ over Fred.
That's true.
Wouldn't you? Now, if you had your choice, which one are you going to go with?
RJ sounds cooler.
No offense to Fred, but RJ sounds cooler than Fred.
I think it was Preston that made the comment that Fred and Wendell sounds like the oldest linebacking duo in the entire. That sounds like that's like NFL from 1940s.
Yeah, it's like, listen, the most famous Fred we know is Flintstone.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, hey, Fred, what, Wendell? You want to go play some football? Sure, let me get my leather helmet.
That was back before the forward pass was legal.
It is true. But seeing RJ, Fred,
Sure.
whoever in rep 2, that just shows you that maybe he's giving them some eyeball at practice that's positive.
I think it's also important to remember with these kind of things that is also how they play around other guys on the defense, because it's not all up to how you do individually. How do you mesh with these 2 other linebackers? How do you, coming off this edge, work with this other guy coming off the other edge, as well as the guys on the interior defensive line? So it's a lot of parts and pieces, which again is what spring practice is for. You only have 15 practices over the course of a month to try a bunch of different things out. And again, you're not setting your depth chart after the spring game. And we always say you take that game with a grain of salt anyway, because it's not indicative of what the fall is going to be like. I can guarantee you there's going to be somebody that's going to pop and put up great stats in the spring game that you may never hear from when the fall rolls around.
We talked about Elijah Caldwell.
Yeah.
He was the MVP of the summer, it felt like, right?
Sure. And
how do you do during the regular season?
Nothing. We forgot he was on the team.
Yeah, so you can't look. We love football. We want to talk about everything that comes our way. We want to read everything, watch everything. Just always remember the stuff we're giving you is just information that Wes is getting or Chris, who are out there, and they're not putting this in as religion or end all be all of anything. They're just telling you what they're seeing from a reporting perspective. That's all.
It is an observation.
Yep.
And you can read into it however you like.
Yeah.
And again, until we see toe meat leather on August the 31st against Old Dominion, that's what we're going to have to do.
Yeah, and is it great to see Vakari Swain in Rep 2? Sure, because a lot of this stuff gives you hope, right?
Yeah.
You get hope or you get concerned.
It's part of it's validating what you think you know.
Right. And Vakari Swain out there in Rep 2, oh, yeah, this guy's got a ton of physical ability and athletic ability. Maybe he's getting it more now.
Sure.
Maybe he's getting it. So and then you say, well, and then you look at it and go, well, I heard David Spalding was doing some good things, but I don't see his name in the first 3 reps. What does that mean? Nothing.
Right.
David Spalding feels like he's been around 15 years. And if David Spalding could stay healthy, who knows what David Spalding could do for you, but David Spalding's had a very difficult time staying healthy.
Right.
Just the way it is. And when you look at Rep 3, again, what do you glean from that? Not a lot. You see Gage Larvadane's name back out there. Obviously, there's been a lot of news about Larvadane, which is positive. He's played very well. He's made plays. He's flashed. Look, these transfer portal receivers, and we saw where the first rep through was Larvadane, and also Brown got in there, Jared Brown, and then Mazio Bennett, the freshman. But Brown, Larvadane, you look at Huggins, Bruce, these transfer portal guys, 2 of these 3, Tyler, have to bring something. They have to be productive in some way, shape, or form.
Well, they are thought of being, if not all of your featured guys, most of your featured guys, because of how much turnover this wide receiver room has. Now, yes, Nick Harper is going to play his role in getting wide receiver reps. We assume Tyshawn Russell's also going to be in the mix there, but these 3 guys are your veteran presence in that room, and unless they go out there and get somebody else in the spring cycle of the portal, at least I'd say 2 of these guys have to be solid contributors on your offense.
Yeah, because the rest of these guys are question marks. Could the question marks land on the positive side? Sure. Nick Harper could pop up and all of a sudden, wow, be the guy we were hoping he was going to be. Russell has shown flashes at times. Could he become more consistent? Sure. Maybe a freshman pops, like Bennett or Gatling or whatever. But the 3 guys that came in have been productive in some way, shape, or form at different stops.
Yeah.
You know that much.
Yes.
How it translates, we hope, in a good way. All right, so that's the reps. Thank you, Wes Mitchell. However you did it, nice job, my man. We appreciate you. All right, do not forget, beer card's back. You go to 1075thegame.com. You can spend $30 a brewery at 12 craft beer locations. On my smartphone, that equals $360. A $360 value for only $79. If you dig craft beer or you just dig beer and you're like, wow, that sounds like a pretty good value, just go to 1075thegame.com, click on Sweet Deals, get yourself a craft beer card.
I'm not a mathematician, but I think $79 is significantly less than $360.
You sure?
I think.
Okay.
Check my math.
All right, good. Just, again, do it on your phone. See which one's what. So, again, go to 1075thegame.com and click on Sweet Deals. We'll get back in here. Football. I really don't care about spring football in any way, shape, or form. I've watched none of it. But I'm reading about some of the stuff that this UFL is doing, especially regarding officiating, that I think is kind of cool and interesting. And maybe, God forbid, the NFL would steal a little bit of it and pretend like it's their own.
They've already done it once.
So we'll get into that next as we go football, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Also, some interesting comments by Mel Kiper about Spencer Rattler as well. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, halftime show rolling till 3 on the Game. All right, halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Hill on the game as we yap football here in the 1 o'clock hour. But we're gonna take a little break from football too, because we had a lot of basketball that happened yesterday. I want to hit something real quick. And we played a lot of Dawn Staley in the first hour. And before we move back to football, just something really interesting that I want to fire up. And Tyler, go to give me cut 17. I want to start there, and then I want to flip to cut 15. Cut 17, Caitlin Clark talking about her situation with Angel Reese.
Yeah, I think like you said, there's definitely that competitive fire. Both of us want to win more than anything, and that's how it should be when you're a competitor and you get into a situation like this, whether it was the national championship, whether it's Elite Eight. That goes for LSU's entire roster, that goes for Iowa's entire roster. Every single one of us want this so bad. We want to advance to the Final Four so bad, so I think that's the main similarity, is how bad and how competitive we are, and we both grew up loving this game, and we're going to do anything we can to help our teams win.
And that's the way it should be, right?
Yeah.
You're competitive. You're a competitor. You're playing against someone else who wants to beat you.
Totally.
Of course you're going to, especially on this level of intensity, of course there's going to be some stuff. So here's Angel Reese talking about her rivalry with Caitlin Clark.
Don't hate each other. I want everybody to understand that it's just a super competitive game, and I would just wish people realize that, once I get between those lines, it's no friends. I have plenty of friends on the court that I talk to outside of the game, but when I get between those lines, we're not friends, we're not buddies. I'm gonna talk trash to you. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get in your head the whole entire game. But after the game, we can kick it. I don't think people really realize that, and that's fine. I'll take the villain role. I'll take the hit for it, but I know we're going women's basketball, and if this is the way we're going to do it, then this is the way we're going to do it. You like it or you don't.
Why is it okay for men to be that way?
It's a good question, Terry.
Oh, come on, you're not acting like ladies. No, you're out there trying to beat each other, and whoop each other, and you want to win, she wants to win, everybody wants to win, so it's just look, competition knows no gender. Correct?
That's very true. And I feel like that kind of speaks to the greater volume of how women's basketball has been viewed for a long time, and how the perception is not slowly, but really starting to change here in these past couple of years, where the game is more popular than ever, where I think you do have a lot of people maybe tuning in for the first time. And sure, if you go watch your local high school girls basketball game, maybe it's not as intense as the varsity men's game or something like that. But you were talking about Division I athletes fighting for the national championship here. It's going to be intense.
And it should be. I want my players to be intense. I want them to, while we're playing for 4 quarters, I don't like you.
Yeah.
I'll like you at the end. I don't like you during the 4 quarter. At the end, we can all hug and talk and, swap shoes and whatever you want to do. But for 4 quarters, I don't like you. And I don't like your team. I don't like your face. Like when you're a little kid, I don't like your face.
Yeah. You look stupid.
Stupid head. I'm rubber and you're glue. Whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you. But yeah, but it's oh, you guys have to act like late. No, they're acting like competitors. And it's just, I'm watching all this, and if 2 men are like this for 2 different teams, what are we doing? Yeah. And we pick a side, right? We pick we like one and we like the other, correct?
Of course. Well, I think back to a local perspective here, how much we, praised Miles Studi when he was trash talking against Tennessee when they played on the road in Knoxville, as he was making free throws. He's trash talking while he's making free throws. Greatest thing in the world. But when people look at Angel Reese, I'm not necessarily saying people around here, but when people look at Angel Reese trash talking, because she does it all the time. Caitlin Clark does it too. It's well, that's so unbecoming. Why would she do that? Act like you've been there before and blah, blah, blah. But again, on the men's side of things, it's a different story.
You're a young woman. What are you doing? Don't act like these barbaric men. No, you're a competitor. You want to win. I've been watching this unfold going, really?
Yeah.
Competition's competition. All right, and obviously they're playing tonight, and the winner will move on to the Final Four. South Carolina can't see LSU or Iowa unless they all make the championship game.
Exactly.
So, all right, and that will be tonight, and there should be a pretty good amount of eyeballs on Clark and Reese's LSU and Iowa go at it. All right, now flipping back to football. I don't care about this UFL. I don't care about spring football. If I need to take a nap, okay, I'll watch it. No, I won't. I haven't watched a second of it. I won't watch a second. I've seen highlights on SportsCenter. That's all I got.
I saw the kid that kicked the long field goal.
The kid Bates,
cool.
the 64-yard field goal or whatever.
He hadn't kicked since like high school.
Right. And was that a cute story? Because he'll probably end up in the NFL somewhere in a training camp competing for a kicking gig.
Sure.
But the one thing the UFL is doing that I'm reading about is they're giving you a peek behind the curtain when it comes to officiating.
Yes.
Like when something is being challenged, you get transparency.
Yeah.
Which I love is the exact opposite of the secretive world of the NFL where you're like, are these cats even watching the game? Are they binging Hulu in New York? What are they doing on their TVs?
No, we get that one camera up in the corner that shows the janitor mopping up at the NFL review offices. Remember?
Yes.
Tell me that's not the same.
It gets me. It's like I love the transparency of what the UFL is doing from what I'm reading. I even like this whole they got rid of the first down chain. Mm-hmm. To use modern technology for 10 yards. But I think the NFL likes the drama of the first down chain. Is it first down? Is it not? Is it not?
And apparently there's already a sensor in the football, and people have always asked the question, well, why don't you have a sensor in the football and some kind of like laser or some kind of other indication of the first down line where we're not having to bring the chains out and measure? But I agree with you. I think the drama of chains and stuff like that is certainly something that's probably not going to go away anytime soon. But I do appreciate the UFL for saying, hey, why are we still doing it this way when we can totally do it easier and more effectively this other way? Taking some steps forward.
Yeah, I like the idea coaches can challenge anything. Now, again, you get set amount of challenges.
Yeah, you got 3 challenges.
You can just challenge whoever you want.
If you want to challenge if the extra point went through the upright, you can do that.
Go get them.
Go get it.
And that's what I like. I like this idea. Well, we've been screaming about that for 3 years on this show.
Sure. Just
make everything challengeable. Just you don't get any more challenges.
Yeah,
this is so simple.
You have to be wise with your challenges. But if you don't think your offensive lineman held on that play, and you think it's worth challenging, do it.
Yeah. I mean, people go, well, this slows the game down. No, it doesn't. Because you're not giving more challenges. If you gave more challenges, you would slow the game down.
Sure.
Same amount of challenges does not slow the game down. Now, because sometimes it takes them a long time to look if something's a fumble or not, right?
Yeah, totally.
Or if it's an interception. So seeing if it's pass interference or not because it's been challenged isn't going to be any longer than sometimes seeing if there's a fumble.
Right.
Or a guy actually held onto the football making a football move because I don't know what the heck a catch is anymore.
I still don't know.
I've given up. So I like this idea of the transparency of a league I'm never going to watch. Because I'm not trying to be mean.
Yeah.
God love you guys. Go out there and sweat and play. I'm just not going to watch.
And here's the thing: for the longest time, I would have told you, because again, spring league has been popping up for several years now. I would have never thought the NFL would look at anything like that and say, "Yeah, we could implement that." But with this new kickoff procedure that they just put through last week, I mean, anything's on the table at this point in time. And I think the fact that these leagues are not trying to be competitors of the NFL, but truly do serve as Jay Phillips is going to get excited. Those developmental type of leagues where these are guys that got cut from rosters or didn't make practice squads or whatever it may be, or just didn't get a shot at the NFL in general, coming into this league to try and get a second chance. Like, I feel like the NFL can look at these and say, okay, well, here's how these type of guys reacted to this, or here's how this worked in this league. Maybe we should try this in ours.
Yeah, I like the idea the NFL is watching what these other leagues do, and if it's something that would be better, be open to it.
Sure.
Come on. Get crazy. All right, real quick, Mel Kiper spoke about Spencer Rattler during a First Draft podcast with Field Yates of ESPN. Talked about, when Rattler's on, like the Mississippi State game, the Florida game, Vanderbilt game, and he's spinning it and he's lighting it up, he's outstanding. Now, Mel, who watches tons of tape and has a staff of people watching tons of tape, they'll talk about times when he does make an interesting decision, you go, what? Or an interesting throw that you go, what? Even though I think a lot of that scaled down last year.
Right.
Working with Dow Loggins, Mel Kiper is talking about, when Spencer Rattler's got all the physical ability in the world, he just needs to, that D word again, develop. And is he going to go to the right team, which will let him sit like for a year and develop and work on some things he needs to work on that he started working on with Dow Loggins.
Right.
And Mel talks about him, somewhere 3rd round, 4th round area. Jason Reed doing his mock draft and then talked about all the quarterbacks. He thinks Rattler could go late second round or third, fourth. I've said that I think his ceiling is somewhere late second round. I think he'll probably go in the third. Nowhere worse than early fourth.
I
feel
think so.
that's the wheelhouse is late second to early fourth.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So Mel Kiper, good stuff to say about Spencer Rattler, just saying there are some things in his game that need to be developed. That's why he will fall to late second, third, early fourth. But if you want to take your time, you might get something out of a Spencer Rattler. Where could he be your Dak Prescott? I don't know. But very interesting stuff from Mel. All right, halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Hurd. Our text of the hour coming up at 803-404-6100 as we roll till 3 here on the game. All right, time to roll our text of the hour at 803-404-6100. What you got there, Tyler Head?
Today being April Fool's Day, our guy Steven weighs in and says, someone on Twitter got me, said Sellers got hurt. Don't believe anything you read on Twitter today.
It's our buddy, Steven?
Yep, Steven.
Oh, they got him?
They got him.
Oh, Steven, that's okay. Long line of folks forget it's April 1st.
I brought this up earlier. I was scrolling through Twitter this morning, again, not even thinking about what day it was. And so I always like at the beginning of the college basketball season when they play the games on the aircraft carriers, like Duke and Michigan State or whatever. I just think it's cool.
I like it.
Different kind of venue. And I've always said, half jokingly, like, man, it'd be cool if they played a football game on one of these things, right? It's obviously wide enough for it. And Florida Atlantic's Twitter account actually tweeted about that today. Like they had we're playing South Florida on an aircraft carrier in November. And for like half a second, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Then I was like, oh, wait a minute. It's not true.
They got you. Oh, I'll forget it's April 1st.
Well, see, here's the thing. There's a difference between reading something and instantly being aware and actually going on and believing it to be true for a period of time, like your folks up there in Baltimore with the Tim Couch thing. If it takes more than a minute to realize, then you got basically.
Oh, yeah. And if you then go the next step and start reacting out to what you got about, then you're,
hey, did you hear about this?
Yeah, then it gets...
No, I don't think that's true.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right, our 107.5 The Game Twitter X poll. If South Carolina beats NC State in the Final Four, who would you want to see the Gamecocks face in the national championship game? Iowa, LSU, Southern Cal, UConn. Right now, Iowa far and away leading with 38 votes, or 38% of the vote. Southern Cal at 29%, still strong in second. A distant third, LSU, and bringing up the back and forth is UConn. And we talked about it. Southern Cal, maybe it's just LSU fatigue. You've played them twice. You don't want to play them anymore.
Right.
Maybe you're just over LSU and you're tired of hearing Kim Mulkey and Angel Reese and all that stuff. And maybe you don't look at LSU as your rival. Or maybe you just don't want to, enough. Or you don't want, like you said, play them a third time.
That's my thing.
And Southern Cal, you don't know much about. Juju Watkins, obviously most prolific freshman scorer in the country, or one of them. Southern Cal was a 1 seed. Yeah, maybe it's very interesting. Or, UConn, Paige Beckers, but you've beaten UConn the last few times.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, played them not all that long ago towards the towards about the middle of SEC play. And yes, they've had a lot of injuries this season. They're not at full strength, compared to what they've been in years past. But I feel like the baton's kind of been passed a little bit in terms of South Carolina now being the reigning kind of dominant force in women's basketball that, Gino and UConn were for so long.
Yeah, so far we got 226 votes, over 1,300 views on this baby so far. We've only had it going a little bit over, not even 2 hours yet, so feel free to go vote on our Twitter X account at 1075 The Game. All right, so real quick, we're going to get what's trending at 2 here in a little bit, but a lot of stuff from yesterday in the world of college basketball, men, women, the whole deal. One thing is this Washington Post article, speaking of Kim Mulkey and LSU. Then also the LA Times article, speaking of Kim Mulkey and LSU. Well, here's Kim Mulkey talking about this Washington Post article that she talked about before anyone, right?
Right.
It's a hit piece, it's this, it's that. Here's Kim Mulkey on the Washington Post article.
I hadn't read that trash. I'm not going to read it. That's why I hired lawyers. The lawyers will review it, and when this season is over, they'll give me a call and say, this is our next step. Reading that stuff. I
mean, look, I haven't read it yet. I haven't had a chance to. I know 2 or 3 people who have read it, and they said it's nothing you haven't heard before.
No,
it's no new ground.
It wasn't earth-shattering. We were led to believe, and I think Kim Mulkey talking about it a week ago bolstered this a little bit more to where we thought, oh man, this is going to be juicy. We're like, man, is LSU going to have to make a decision on Kim Mulkey if something bad, really bad comes to light?
What kind of awful skeleton is going to fall out of Kim Mulkey's closet?
And again, look, if you've been paying attention for long enough, you know about 90% of what's in that article. I learned about her backstory with her dad and her sister. That was new information, but the anything quote unquote scandalous was nothing new.
Because the way Kim Mulkey reacted, usually you react like this when something's coming out that you don't want anybody to know, right?
Exactly. Like, oh man, they're about to find out about this thing I did years and years ago.
There's a preemptive strike like this.
Sure.
That's what you do. But with what I've heard, and most of it that's already out there, the only thing I can think of is the family stuff that she didn't want out there because it's her family.
Yeah, which again, is that a big deal at the end of the day? No. Not
And
to us,
so,
at least.
really, Kim Mulkey made this worse by handling it the way she did.
Right.
Now, the LA Times article is another whole other thing we'll try to get to in the 2 o'clock hour and what's trending at 2.
Right.
All right, Terry Ford, Tyler Head, halftime show. We roll till 3. What's trending at 2 coming up next here on the game?
2 o'clock, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head along with you, Terry Ford, will be back in here with me in just a little bit. It is indeed 2 o'clock on your Monday afternoon. It's time to hit some of the headlines of what's going on in the world of sports on this April Fool's Day Monday. And yes, everything that I am about to say is true. Please don't think any of this is an April Fool's joke. I know it can be kind of hard to believe today. We'll start off in the world of women's basketball. A team that is not in the mix for going to the Final Four this upcoming weekend in Cleveland. Tennessee Lady Vols, a little over an hour ago, officially parted ways with Kelly Harper as their head coach after her 5th season at the helm up there in Knoxville. They got bounced in the second round of this year's NCAA tournament, losing to NC State, team that South Carolina is getting set to play coming up on Friday night. And we knew going into the tournament that Kelly Harper was likely going to be on thin ice, especially with how they let the game against South Carolina get away from them in the SEC tournament. Of course, that was a game that Camille Cardoso sunk her miracle three-pointer to allow South Carolina to stay undefeated and go to the SEC championship game. That, a lot of that, I don't want to say a lot of Harper's future rode on that game, but being able to get back, or to being able to get that team to an SEC championship game, potentially win the thing, could have done a lot for helping her cause out. She obviously lost that game. If you remember watching it, they immediately cut to her and she was just in tears, obviously from losing the game, but I think what it ended up meaning to her ultimately also probably played a factor in some of those emotions. And then when you go into the NCAA tournament and get bounced after only 2 games, which again, to a to an NC State team that is really, really good overall, it still doesn't do a whole lot for for Kelly Harper in regards to to keeping her job. So they moved on from her, and it's one of those things where when you look at her time as the as the head coach at Tennessee, not awful. 108-52 record overall this year, won 20 games. The only sub 20 win season they had was in year number 2, where they also still ended up making the tournament at the end of the day, and that was a COVID year, so a lot less games were being played then. Winning 10 games in conference every year, but that same year, which again, a few less games because of COVID and stuff like that. So she had the level of success that for a lot of programs would keep you around for a really, really long time. But this is Tennessee. It's a different story. When you are not performing at an elite level, then you're not going to stick around very long. And when you look at, Coach Warwick, who was there before her, she got Tennessee to a couple of Elite Eights early on in her tenure there. But as time went on, it was first round, second round, first round, second round. She couldn't have that deep run into the tournament that Tennessee expects out of its women's basketball program, and she was moved on from. And Kelly Harper, who, again, was it seemed like a match made in heaven because she was a former player for Pat Summitt at Tennessee, coming back home after having success at a place like Missouri State and, NC State before that back in the day, coming back home to coach and take her former program to the heights that she got to enjoy as a player. And it obviously did not end up working out that way. So she is now gone from Tennessee, looking for a job, and the Lady Vols will go back to the drawing board in terms of what they're going to do as far as their next head coach goes. But again, it's a program that's not necessarily been awful, but not performing to the level that is expected of them out there in Knoxville, overall, which again has ultimately led to her being removed as the head coach out there in Tennessee. Haven't really gotten to dive in a ton to the men's bracket as their Final Four has been set for this upcoming weekend out there in Phoenix. And the mix of teams in the Final Four in the men's side of things is certainly Certainly interesting. And we'll start off with Purdue, who was a team that, a season ago, all eyes were on them, expecting them to, if nothing else, make a deep run into the tournament as a number 1 overall seed. And guess what happened? They got beaten by Fairleigh Dickinson in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and only the second team to do so, and got sent home completely embarrassed. And I want you to listen to this quick cut by Matt Painter, who's the head coach at Purdue, after they picked up the victory yesterday against Tennessee, and what he had to say about the bounce back for this team from a season ago.
Sure helped when Zach came back, right? So all these guys have played so hard and worked on their game and put a lot of time into it, and we had to sit in it. We had to take it, and sometimes when you sit in it and you're honest with yourself and you take it, some great things can happen.
And yeah, they had to hear that for an entire year, that they embarrassed themselves against a lesser opponent that they had no business losing to. And it's one of those things that, you play Fairleigh Dickinson and Purdue 100 times. Well, guess what? Purdue's probably winning 90 to 95% of those games, but they couldn't beat them a season ago. And that's all that mattered in that one-game sample size. And that's what Purdue came into the season motivated to do, was to try and get back and, earn that respect back. And so far, so good on task. First Final Four appearance since 1980. Certainly does help when you're 7'4", enormous star player in Zach Edey returns. I did think it was funny. Zach Edey talked about not being respected by teams and people being overlooked and all that kind of stuff. You're 7'4", man. I don't think anybody was overlooking you, especially coming out of IMG Academy in Florida. So I think that's just a little bit of a revisionist mindset with Zach Edey there. But nevertheless, 40-point performance against Tennessee yesterday in a game that Purdue was not hitting threes like they normally do. They're a very effective three-point shooting team, and yesterday was their worst performance of the entire season. But Zach Edey put things on his back and was able to help lead them to that victory and get them back to the Final Four. They're going to take on North Carolina State, who is the closest thing to a Cinderella that we still have left in the NCAA tournament. Now, I don't consider any team that is in a Power 5 conference or soon to be Power 4 conference to be a Cinderella, because I think Cinderellas have to come from mid-majors. That being said, the remarkable story of NC State can't be downplayed, and the fact that they were on the ropes. I mean, they were tied up with Louisville with 5 minutes to go in the opening round of the ACC tournament, went on a tear through there, obviously beat North Carolina to claim that crown, and it really set up one of those kind of situations where it's like, man, watching them run through that ACC tournament was fun, and I even had them picked winning in the first round against Texas Tech, but not really far after that. It's like one of those teams that is probably going to come in and maybe win one game in the NCAA tournament, bow out at the round of 32 or the Sweet 16, and we all, give them that standing ovation as they're walking off the court and say, man, that team really overachieved, and I'm happy I got to watch them and all that kind of stuff. NC State didn't get that memo. They have been on a tear since the beginning of that ACC tournament and now lock their sights on their first Final Four appearance in 40 years themselves. And they'll take on Purdue coming up on Saturday night, get a big man versus big man battle between Zach Edey and DJ Burns, which I'm very excited for. I think it's going to be a fun game. I will tell you right now, I'm rooting for NC State. I have no other dogs in the fight, and my bracket was busted a long time ago, so I'd love to see the Wolfpack pull off an upset win over Purdue and maybe claim a national championship as an underdog. On the other side of things are two very interesting coaches, to say the least, with Alabama and UConn squaring off in the other Final Four game coming up on Saturday. We'll start locally, or more regionally, I guess, with Nate Oates, the head coach at Alabama. His story has been told plenty of times at this point, coaching high school basketball a couple years ago, and now finds himself at the helm of one of the biggest brand names in all of college sports, and finally was able to get them to their first Final Four. And here is Nate Oates talking about what that means to him and to the program.
when I was a kid, big basketball fan. I used to, gonna date myself a little bit. You had the VHS tapes, so every time I had every one of the shining moments labeled on a VHS tape, so I could go back and watch that thing all summer. Then you start to grow up in the coaching profession, and you just want to be at the Final Four, be in the hotel lobby, so I can see the big name coaches that are there, and somehow I caught enough breaks. I'm coaching in one, which is unreal. I mean, give hope to a lot of high school coaches tonight, that's for sure. But I don't know if it's really hit me yet. It probably won't hit me until after the Final Four is over, because I'm going to enjoy it tonight a little bit, and then we got to try to figure out how to beat UConn, because they're pretty good. They went on a 30-0 run, I heard, tonight. Is that correct? That's unheard of in the Elite Eight. That's crazy.
So, Nate Oates, again, getting Alabama to their first Final Four, and he talked about this as well after the game, over the weekend, that, and this was the criticism of them when they got bounced in the Sweet 16 a year ago, was, when you rely so much on shooting the three-pointer, that eventually it's going to come back to bite you. And they went 3 of 27 in that game a season ago against San Diego State in the Sweet 16, and up to this point, through the tournament, it's worked. And all it has to do is work for 2 more games, and Alabama will be your 2024 national champion. So, again, no signs of slowing down at this point in time, but they are facing the toughest competition in all of the NCAA tournament, that being the defending champions in UConn. And here is their coach, Dan Hurley, on the level of respect that he feels like they have garnered being the top team that they are.
It was a tweet I got sent to me. Okay. I got a tweet, and, it's like I'm not on there a lot. I turn the notifications off, which, was a game changer for me. But, I like the slights. I like... I think there's obviously a lot of experts out there, and maybe, people that follow different conferences, haven't seen Big East basketball, but we're both on Fox. So Big Ten and Big East, they probably could have caught some more of those games. But we like those external things. Again, we were picked closer to 4th than we were 3rd in the Big East preseason polls by the coaches. So we any external that you give us, we heard the things the players were saying on the lead up to this one, and as defending national champs and what we've done since last February and how we've played in this tournament, we feel like we've earned a certain level of respect from media and opposing players when they face us right now, because we've been that good.
Dan Hurley is a lot of things. Lacking confidence is certainly not one of them, and he definitely comes across very cocky there, but rightfully so. That is a team that did win the national championship a season ago, and very similar to South Carolina, had to see a lot of their best players leave, and we didn't really know what was going to be the level of expectation for them coming into the season. As you mentioned, they were picked around 34th in the Big East, and guess what? They won the whole thing, and now we're playing for a shot at going to the national championship game coming up on Saturday night, taking on Alabama. And they've had the best run through the tournament so far. And I don't know if Alabama can handle them. I'll be honest, and we'll see what happens on Saturday night and who ultimately punches their ticket to the Final Four coming up next Monday night to claim a national champion. Baseball was in action over the weekend. Fell 2 out of 3 times to Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa. I talked with Jack Belcher from Gamecock Central earlier on this morning. We'll recap that conversation coming up next on the Halftime Show. Tyler Head along with you, Terry Ford will be back in with me shortly here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head with you on this Monday afternoon. Terry Ford will be back in here with me shortly. Again, baseball was in action over the weekend in Tuscaloosa, taking on Alabama. Ended up dropping the first two. Won game number 3, and I talked with Jack Velcher of Gamecock Central earlier on this morning. Game number 3 ended on a wild sequence with Talmadge LeCroy and Will Tippett. And I started off by asking him his perspective and his view of that final play of the game.
I thought I was gonna have to start my story from scratch with that 9th inning, man. It was getting dicey there for a second. Yeah, I mean, look, Garrett Gainey pitched that 9th inning to start, and you gotta remember he pitched. I think he threw like maybe 24 pitches on Friday, so you knew he was kind of coming in with a little bit of a short rest, and he had just pitched the 8th inning too. So let's not forget that. So he was really kind of on his last leg there. And then, yeah, I mean, just Alabama just starts getting some runs and stuff, and then it all compiles into a situation where the tying and winning runs are on base, and it's like, oh, man, like, what's going to happen here? And thankfully, I mean, they took him out of the game. They decided to go with Chris Veach, and, it looked like Veach might be in trouble there for a second, too, but he gets that ground ball, and then, I mean, right off the bat, you knew it was going to be an infield hit. There was no doubt about it. I think it really says a lot about Talmadge LeCroy to pump fake the throw to first because he knows he's not going to get the guy. Turn around and catch the runner that's on third, going a little too far off the bag, and Will Tippett's there sneaking behind him to make the tag and make the play. And it was a really, really good play. I didn't know if it was going to be overturned or not because it was on a review. But it was crazy. It was a lot to just set in with the mind, taking it all in, I guess. It was a crazy 9th inning.
Well, it kept South Carolina from getting swept. Did end up losing the series overall, but winning one game is better than losing all 3 of them. You mentioned Garrett Gainey a moment ago, who did come in that 9th inning, or excuse me, the 8th inning, and then got replaced by Veach there at the very end to get that last out. But he's a guy that has been so lights out for this team so far this season. We talked about it, in the past couple weeks leading up that the one run he had surrendered been that home run against Clemson, but really had not given up much of anything since then. Comes in on Friday night, gives up a couple hits, gives up a run, and then comes in on Thursday night, and then comes in on Saturday. And as you mentioned, maybe a little bit of fatigue factor there. What do you make of this? Is this just running into a really good offense in Alabama that maybe he's not seen quite to this point, or is this something that could be a sign of things to come?
I think it's a combination of Alabama having a really good offense, and then, look, I mean, I think it's very unrealistic to say that he was going to be lights out all year. I think in very rare cases you have guys that end up pitching to an ERA under 1 the entire season. In the pros and college baseball, I think that's very tough. And at some point, he was going to run into trouble where he's going to get hit around a little bit. He's a very, very, very good left-handed pitcher, throws really hard, has good off-speed stuff. But, at some point, there's going to be a guy or someone out there that is able to catch up to it and make you pay a little bit. And I think it was also, you have to factor in that he pitched so much this weekend. I mean, he pitched, I believe, I'm trying to think. I mean, he pitched at least, 3 innings this weekend? I mean, that could be a lot for a reliever. And the fact that Alabama already saw him on Friday just shows that, they were able to figure his stuff out by Sunday. And, you gotta get props for it too. Alabama definitely tagged him in that 9th inning. But at the same time, I wouldn't be worried long term. I think Gainey's going to be fine as the season goes along. He's been really good so far, and this is just one blemish on what has been a really outstanding first year at South Carolina for him.
Again, talking to our guy, Jack Velcher from Gamecock Central, recapping the weekend that was in Carolina baseball. And flipping over the offense now, Gavin Cassis ends up with one of the best marks as far as hitters from the weekend, going 357 with 2 RBIs and 1 home run, piggybacking off of what was another solid performance for him last weekend against Vanderbilt. He kind of had a rough start of the season. What are you seeing out of Gavin Cassis that kind of seems to seeing him finally click in gear a little bit over these past couple of series?
Yeah, I think I think the thing that Mark Kingston was telling me is that, Gavin's kind of been hitting against left-handers, starting against left-handers, and then, with righties, it's more like Tyler Causey. And I think that's a good problem to have when you're able to, matchup those two guys, because I mean, you definitely want both their bats in the lineup at the same time. But I mean, when push comes to shove, if you have to start one over the other, I think I like the idea of having Gavin against lefties. At some point, he's going to be able to hit against righties, right? I think that's at some point he's just got too much power in his bat not to be able to do so. And I think, combined with a good glove, I mean, look, he's taking better at bats. I was very critical of it didn't matter at the end of the day because South Carolina won on Saturday, but there was a situation, I believe in like the fifth or fourth inning, where South Carolina had a few guys on base. They were down. They had just scored 3 runs, and they were going to be able to, potentially tie the game or whatever. And then, Gavin lays down a bunt first pitch, and he fouls it off. And I'm like, wait, what? This is a guy that literally came about a foot from hitting a home run in his first at bat, and then he had, I think he had really hit off. He had hit like a single in the second at bat or something. So he's been tagging Alabama all day, and then it's just like, what are you bunting for in that situation? And then he goes on to strike out. So I think he's been swinging very well. He ended up getting another hit later in the game, but yeah, I mean, what can you say? I mean, you want him to start swinging better, and when he is, I mean, it really goes a long way for the entire lineup.
Last one for you here. Got right about 2 minutes. When they're on the road, they don't always post Coach Kingston's post-game press availability. So I'm curious, what were Kingston's thoughts overall on the weekend when it was all said and done?
Yeah, and I think this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. It's tough to win on the road in the SEC. Every game's tough. I mean, South Carolina is fortunate to come away with at least one win. I know in the whole bigger picture that, fans are going to be disappointed that South Carolina lost 2 of 3 and that, it's back to, Kingston being fired and this and that. But I think he's got them going in the right direction. I mean, look, they were in a tie game in the 8th inning on Friday, and it just slipped away with Matthew Becker kind of, I don't want to say going over his pitch count, but kind of, facing Alabama, I think like second or third time through the order or whatever. And then Parker Marlott comes in and, also doesn't pitch well. So it's just, look, I mean, South Carolina's going to be fine. Kingston had a lot of good things to say about, this win on Saturday really kind of helps make you feel better about everything, right? Because now they're 5-4 in league play. They, have a confidence-boosting win on a really big play to end the game. And now you go into a week where you're getting Georgia Southern, and then you get a good Texas A&M team at home in Columbia. So I think while it is tough to lose a series, you don't ever want to lose a series. The important thing is you didn't get swept, and you managed to take the final game of the series, which can really help be a confidence boost. I mean, look at what happened with the Ole Miss series. You drop the first 2 games, and then you play a lot better in Game 3, and then you go on to win, I believe, 6 games in a row. So, look, it's a long season. It's baseball. Things are going to happen, and you just got to kind of roll with the punches and, make the most of what you got.
Absolutely. We'll check in on you with a little bit later on in the week and get set for the A&M series coming up this weekend at Founders Park. Appreciate it as always, Jack.
Appreciate it, my man. Thank you so much.
And that was Jack Felcher from Gamecock Central as we talked about what happened this weekend out there in Tuscaloosa. And as he mentioned there, back in action coming up on Wednesday, taking on Georgia Southern. The pregame coverage for that starts at 6:45 for a 7 o'clock first pitch. And then taking on A&M this weekend at home out there at Founders Park. In between that, on Thursday, actually, you have Carolina Calls with Coach Kingston. That'll be at 6 o'clock, which you'll be able to listen to right here on the games. It gives his thoughts going into the weekend. We'll come back, hit the greatest day in the history of the world, April 1st. That's next on the Halftime Show. Tyler Head and Terry Ford with you on a Monday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head along with you. Terry Ford will rejoin me in just a couple of minutes. It is indeed the greatest day in the history of the world. Today being April the 1st. As you can imagine, a lot of NCAA tournament stuff has happened on this day throughout the years. And to be specific, this is a very, very good day in the history of Notre Dame women's basketball. Start first back in 2018 as they took down Mississippi State 61 to 58. Jessica Shepard scoring 19 points in that game, and then we'll rewind back to 2001 as they took down Notre Dame 68 to 66. So a couple national championships being decided on this day for Notre Dame women's basketball, and obviously Notre Dame team was in the Elite Eight this time around. Could not get past Oregon State the other night, or excuse me, the Sweet 16. Could not get past Oregon State for a chance at a rematch with South Carolina. But again, a program with a lot of history over the years, specifically on this date, April the 1st. Go to 2016. Golden State Warriors NBA record winning home winning streak, I guess is a better way to phrase that, ends at 54 games after they lost 109 to 106 to the Boston Celtics. The loss at the Oracle Arena was the Warriors' first since January of 2015, and obviously that was a Warriors team, one of the best to not win a title. Overall that season, with the record of 73-9, and again just completely dominant at home. And that's the season that we famously got the meme of Golden State blowing the 3-1 lead that they had in the finals over Cleveland, as that was the year that LeBron was finally able to bring the ring home for his hometown team before leaving a couple years later to go out to LA. But a great Golden State team, and that run of winning that many games at home is pretty remarkable, and be hard pressed to see another team do that kind of thing again. And look, Golden State is so interesting because they were a team that was at the height of its success was legendary. And yeah, you still have a few of the same faces, obviously, with guys like Steph Curry still being there, but it's a team and an organization that is nowhere near where they were just a couple seasons ago. And that 2016 season was obviously one that they're going to feel like really got away from them with with not being able to capitalize and win that championship. For them. One more here, the greatest day in the history of the world, this being back in 2020. The All England Lawn Tennis Club canceled Wimbledon for the first time since World War II because of COVID, and the entire grass court season abandoned. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when it was around the March 12th, 13th, which was the day that everything kind of started getting canceled because of COVID 4 years ago. But I think it's easy to forget that it was several weeks and several months in some cases for some sports leagues to kind of really announce what they were going to do, especially the ones that weren't playing in the spring. So, Wimbledon could afford to wait a little longer, and unfortunately they did have to cancel. But college football, it was into the early summer before they finally started announcing what they were going to do. There was, obviously the Big Ten tried to get out in front of everyone and saying, well, we're just going to, we're going to cancel our season, move it to the spring, thinking everybody was going to fall in line behind them. And I think Greg Sankey and the SEC, rightfully so, were like, we're going to wait a little bit, and we're going to try and figure this out. And, the Big Ten had to scramble and put something together. But, it's just, it's weird to look back on those kind of things now and how different the world was, and how much sports changed because of that, and how much still changed since then. I think we're still feeling the effects in a lot of sports on things that they had to do and learn to do, during COVID. I have to look at last week, we're talking about the NFL playing playing on a Wednesday on Thanksgiving where you have teams, whoever those teams will end up being, playing 3 games in 11 days. But Roger Goodell said, hey, we did it during COVID and didn't spike injuries or anything like that. So we're gonna do it this time around with with Christmas as well. So just kind of crazy in hindsight how all those things kind of end up changing. I want to loop back around to women's basketball and again, Dawn Staley and company punched their ticket to their 4th straight Final Four appearance. And one of the big keys for their win yesterday against Oregon State was Ashlyn Watkins, who we touched on a little bit earlier, and what she was able to do from a defensive standpoint. Coach Staley here talking about Ashlyn Watkins and her shot blocking ability.
It starts with volleyball. Asia played volleyball. Ashlyn played volleyball. We got another one coming in, Joyce Edwards plays volleyball. So I think those 2-3 sport athletes always gives us an opportunity to be great shot blockers. Ash, I don't know if she came into South Carolina saying I want to be one of the best or the best, but when you put it out there in front of her and she understands what that means, she'll start goal setting. She's got a chance because she can guard on the perimeter. She can guard in the post. So there are more opportunities for her to block shots because of her athletic ability and her ability to play, positions 1 through 5.
Regardless of the reason why she's able to block those shots, she put it on full display yesterday against Oregon State, just putting in a masterful defensive performance, or just performance overall. 8 points, 14 rebounds, and 4 block shots. And they interviewed her after the game, and she self-admitted, she did not have her best performance against Indiana in the, in the Sweet 16 the other night. That was a game she only had 3 rebounds and 1 block shot, and she wanted to kind of jump up back on the horse a little bit and, contribute in a better way to help get this team to a national championship. And that's exactly what she did in yesterday's game against Oregon State. And again, it's not the first time this season that she's kind of responded after not playing maybe her best game. I go back to, the SEC championship or SEC tournament, and the game against Tennessee wasn't her overall best performance, particularly when it comes to blocking shots, which, again, is kind of her signature calling card. Just 1 in that game, and she responds against LSU with 5 and grabbed more rebounds in that game as well. So, good turnaround from one game to the next, and obviously a big part of why South Carolina is so successful is she's just one of many, many great parts and pieces on this team that can step up in any night, which was what makes them so dangerous when you get into these later runs of the NCAA tournament. And there are plenty of deep teams out there, but I don't think any team out there could boast having a group of 5 coming off the bench that are just as effective and just as dangerous as any starting 5 in the country. They could probably hang with any starting 5 in the country if asked to do so. And again, that speaks volumes to what Dawn Staley has not only built from a recruiting standpoint, but a development standpoint as well. These women don't come in here as the best versions of themselves as basketball players. It takes that development. It takes that ingraining in a system like South Carolina has to help mold them into being the best versions of themselves that they can be, and eventually translating over into winning awards and winning national championships at the college level, and for a lot of them eventually making it to the WNBA and making professional careers out of it as well. And again, Ashlyn Watkins just a late example of that, and somebody that is obviously still young, just being a sophomore, so more time to continue to grow and continue to improve. But she is again another big piece on this South Carolina team, and a big reason why they are so successful and still undefeated at this point in the season, pursuing another national championship up there in Cleveland later on this week. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Halftime Show. Hit the Firehouse Subs text of the hour as well. Tyler Head, Terry Ford, along with you on your Monday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head wrapping up today's edition. It is time for our Firehouse Subs text of the hour. We posed the question earlier of the 4 remaining teams left to decide who's going to go to the Final Four. Which of them would you like to see South Carolina potentially face in the national championship should South Carolina get past NC State coming up on Friday? The options: LSU, Iowa, UConn, and Southern Cal. Iowa still leading the way at 38%. Southern Cal still in second at 27. LSU in third at 20, and UConn in fourth at 15. That brings us to our Firehouse Subs text of the hour. Or LaDonna weighing in says, Iowa, bring it. Also says, LSU have already beaten them. UConn done that too. I get that, and that's the point that I brought up earlier in why I'd like to see Iowa. There's also the revenge factor. This is the team that ended your run for perfection a season ago. How poetic would it be to match up with them in the national championship game to finally be able to lay claim to that undefeated national championship season? And also there's the element of keeping Caitlin Clark from winning a national championship. She's accomplished just about everything you can accomplish in a women's college basketball career. I mean, she obviously holds just about every conceivable record that you can think of, and is going to go down as one of the greatest of all time. And there's no denying that for her individual accomplishments. But as far as a team goes, still chasing after that national championship. And, of course, she's going to be gone off to the WNBA after this. So South Carolina could be the final thing standing in her way of doing that. And, not only would it be, redeeming from a standpoint of beating Iowa because they beat you a season ago, but, again, keeping one of the best players of all time from claiming the sport's top prize. I'd love to see it. And, again, it goes back to the fact that I think that South Carolina is, we know, we've seen it this year. South Carolina is more adept to beat a team like Iowa with the way that they're a lot more dynamic on offense now. So, Iowa just allowing South Carolina freedom from 3 points last year because they knew they couldn't beat them that way. That's not going to happen this time around. You've got Pow Pow, you got Raven Johnson, you've got Tessa Johnson, you got girls that can make threes. And it's become an integral part of this offense for South Carolina, to where if they matched up with Iowa, I don't know what Iowa's game plan would be, but it's certainly going to have to be something a whole lot different this time around if they want to beat South Carolina. Now we'll see if Iowa can get past LSU tonight. I'm very excited for this matchup, by the way. I think it's going to be a great one. Obviously, it's got all the star power you can ask for in women's college basketball and all the names that people are going to pay attention to. So there's going to be a lot of folks that maybe haven't even watched the women's NCAA tournament up to this point, but will be tuning in, tonight to see Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark and Kim Mulkey and Flau'jae Johnson and all those names that we've become so accustomed to knowing here in the past couple of years in women's college basketball. That's going to draw in a lot of attention and probably going to bring in a really good rating for ESPN, which is, conveniently why that game's being played on a Monday night where you have a great captive audience, similar to like Monday Night Football. But I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a good game. And then the one that nobody's talking about, you got Southern Cal and UConn in the nightcap, where you get to see Juju Watkins, who maybe you haven't seen all season long, or at least haven't seen a lot of, get the opportunity to go up against a very good UConn team that, again, is down some good players with injuries this year, but great night of women's college basketball ahead.
What are we doing? Let's go. I'm ready to roll. Let's go. Let's do this thing.
You got 60 seconds.
Let's rock and roll, man. Let's go, Tyler. You act like you've been here for an hour. Come on, man.
I was going to say, I'm excited to see what happens tonight, see who the final two teams are. As to make it to the Final Four, and Iowa's still winning our vote right now for the team that people would most like to see South Carolina
How
play in a
surprised are you by that? On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 0.
Not at all. And
Not
I
surprised.
brought up the point. There's the revenge factor, but also you could keep Caitlin Clark from winning a national championship. The one thing she has yet to accomplish in her college career, and you could be the thing standing between that.
And you look, Caitlin Clark obviously has been the face of this sport for people outside of people who are into the sport, like the casual fan, whatever, media. There's some Caitlin Clark fatigue outside of Iowa.
Absolutely.
It probably, especially here,
Well, you see
after
her
what
in a
happened
State
last year.
Farm commercial, every commercial break now.
Yeah. So, again, stopping her from winning a national title would make some folks very happy.
Of
Just
course.
saying.
Of course.
Hey, man, it's good hanging out with you this hour. I'm done. I'm tired.
It was fun.
Hey, we'll do it again sometime soon.
Well, not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow. All right, Tyler, fine job hanging in here for me while we had to go run around and do some stuff. Post-game show live from Savage in West Columbia. Jay and Elijah hanging out there, probably sampling a ton of craft beer, knowing both of them. So that's coming up next from 3 to 6, the post-game show right here on The Game.